The year was 3042, and Earth, once vibrant and full of life, now looked more like an open-air graveyard. The seas had receded, leaving behind saline deserts, and the forests, which were once the planet's lungs, had turned to ashes, reduced to nothing but scorched fields. Global warming, a problem humanity had postponed for generations, had finally taken its toll. Few could remember what it was like to breathe without respiratory masks or live without the constant hum of machines filtering the little oxygen that remained. Most of the human population had perished. Coastal cities were swallowed by the oceans, only to resurface as ruins covered in salt. Inland, sandstorms and radioactive dust were constant. It was as if the entire planet had conspired against life. Yet, some survivors remained, but they no longer lived on the ground. The last human cities floated above Earth, sustained by alien technology acquired through a fragile alliance with a race known as the Kyyrians. Cities like Nexus were islands of metal and machines, hovering over a dead planet. The Kyyrians had arrived on Earth 100 years earlier, after the destruction of their own homeworld. Initially, they were welcomed as heroes. Their promises of technology capable of healing the Earth reignited a hope that had long since faded. But the relationship between the two species quickly soured. Attempts to reverse the environmental damage failed, and tensions between humans and Kyyrians turned into distrust. Now, the two peoples barely coexisted, and the quiet conflicts between them were about to erupt into open war. Nexus, one of the largest floating cities, was a symbol of resilience but also of despair. Living there was Elara Vasquez, a scientist whose passion for restoring Earth went beyond anything else. She had grown up hearing her grandparents' stories of a different world, lush green forests, clean rivers, and skies that didn't burn your skin. These memories fueled her desire to bring life back to the planet. For years, Elara had worked on developing the Aurora Protocol, a bold project that promised nothing less than terraforming Earth. The idea was simple in theory: use Kyyrian technology to reverse the effects of global warming and restore the planet's ecosystems. But the execution was a colossal challenge. She faced countless failures, last-minute adjustments, and opposition, both from her peers and the government. Her greatest opponent was Drake Morrow, the ruthless military commander who ruled Nexus with an iron fist. To him, Earth was beyond saving. "You're dreaming of a dead planet," he often told Elara with disdain. Drake believed that humanity's only salvation lay in the stars. His plan was clear: build a fleet of colonial ships and leave Earth behind as a bitter memory. Under Drake's leadership, Nexus had become a suffocating place. He controlled resources with an iron grip, and anyone who dared to question his authority faced severe consequences. But Elara, along with a group of dissidents known as the Renaissance Movement, refused to believe the planet was lost. They knew that activating the Aurora Protocol without Drake's approval would be seen as treason. And in Drake's regime, treason was punishable by death. Yet, Elara was willing to risk everything. For her, saving Earth wasn't just a scientific goal, it was a matter of survival and faith in the future. While Elara and her group secretly planned how to activate the protocol, something unexpected happened. One quiet night, as she reviewed the complex terraforming calculations in her lab, the door slowly opened, revealing an unanticipated visitor. It was Soren, a Kyyrian with translucent skin and glowing eyes, exiled by his own kind. Soren wasn't like the other Kyyrians. While many of his race viewed humans with disdain, he believed in coexistence and shared Elara's desire to save the planet. "The Aurora Protocol won't work the way you expect," he said, his voice low but filled with gravity. "If you activate it now, it could trigger a chain reaction that will destroy what's left of Earth." Elara was shocked. "How is that possible?" "I've gone over every detail, every piece of data. I've spent years working on this. The data you have is incomplete, Soren replied. The Kyyrians withheld part of the technology. We didn't trust humans to use it properly. But I discovered the flaw. If you move forward, the last remnants of Earth will be lost forever. Doubt gripped Elara. She knew Soren was telling the truth, but accepting his help meant trusting a Kyyrian, something many humans and even some of her allies saw as betrayal. She was caught between a rock and a hard place. Drake was getting closer to uncovering the Renaissance movement, and the Kyyrians planned to abandon the planet soon, taking with them any hope of salvation. As Elara grappled with the unsettling truth Soren had revealed, the situation in Nexus grew more dire. Clashes between humans and Kyyrians were becoming violent, and rumors spread that the aliens were planning a mass exodus, leaving Earth behind for good. Fear and anger were palpable, and the distrust between the two species had reached its peak. Sensing that something was about to happen, Drake intensified his crackdown. His troops patrolled every corner of the city, and his spies were everywhere. He knew the Renaissance movement was planning something, but he didn't yet know when or where they would act. And then came the most painful blow for Elara. Nyx Xander, one of her closest allies, began to have second thoughts. For years, Nyx had shared Elara's vision of restoring Earth, but now, faced with the growing instability and Drake's constant threat, she began to question the plan. "We're fighting for an impossible dream," she said one night during a secret meeting. "The planet is dead. Maybe Drake is right. Maybe it's time to leave." Elara was horrified. Nyx wasn't just a friend. She was a key player in the movement. What Elara didn't know was that Nyx had already started feeding information to Drake. In Nyx's mind, she was ensuring her own survival. If Elara's plan failed, and Nyx believed it would, at least she would be safe by Drake's side. The dawn of the attack arrived without warning. Nexus was shrouded in a thick fog, as if the planet itself was holding its breath before the storm. Then the Kyyrian ships appeared on the horizon. They were massive, powerful, and utterly impossible to ignore. This wasn't a routine visit. It was an invasion. Drake's forces quickly mobilized, but the Kyyrians' technology was far superior. Explosions reverberated through the city, and the sky lit up with the fire of alien weapons. Nexus, that gigantic floating city, seemed like a house of cards on the verge of collapse. In the midst of it all, Elara and Soren raced against time to adjust the Aurora Protocol. They knew that if they failed now, there would be no second chance. Nexus's streets were in chaos, buildings trembled under the bombardment, and civilians ran, desperate, seeking shelter. Inside the lab where the protocol was being finalized, Elara encountered Nyx. "You're going to destroy what's left of us," Nyx shouted, her weapon aimed at Elara. "This planet is dead. You're obsessed with a lost cause." Before Nyx could fire, Soren stepped into the room, his expression serious and determined. "You don't understand," he said urgently. "If we don't activate the protocol now, there will be no future for either humans or Kyyrians. This is our last chance." The tension was suffocating. Elara knew that every second counted, but she also knew that one wrong move could cost everything. Nyx was torn between her loyalty to Drake and her belief that Earth couldn't be saved. And then, at the most critical moment, Drake arrived. He led a squad of soldiers, his expression one of cold triumph. "It's over, Elara. You're going to watch this city fall while I and my people leave for a new future." The final confrontation began with a ferocity no one expected. Drake's forces and the Renaissance movement clashed in the heart of Nexus, while Kyyrian ships bombarded the city from above. Explosions, screams, destruction. It all blended into a cacophony of chaos. Elara and Soren managed to activate the Aurora Protocol, but something went wrong. The system began to fail. It was Nyx, Elara realized with a sinking heart. She had sabotaged the protocol. The city started to collapse around them. Entire structures were crumbling, falling toward Earth's devastated surface below. In a desperate act, Drake tried to destroy the protocol. For him, if Elara's plan failed, he would at least secure the departure of his colonial fleet. But Elara faced him head-on. In a fierce physical struggle, she managed to disarm him, though Soren was gravely injured in the process. Even so, he summoned his last strength and, with a faint voice, gave Elara the final coordinates needed to fix the protocol. Elara rushed to input the data. And then everything changed. Energy radiated from the terraforming core, spreading across Earth. The sky, once covered by dust storms and acidic clouds, began to clear. For the first time in centuries, sunlight shone down on the planet. Life was starting to return. Months had passed since the Aurora Protocol had been activated, and Earth was changing. The forests, once reduced to ashes, were beginning to grow again. The oceans, which had become deserts of salt, were filling with water. And the sky, the blue sky, was a sight no one thought they'd ever see again. The war between humans and Kyyrians was finally over. They had learned, the hard way, that they needed to work together to rebuild the planet. Elara, now seen as a hero, walked through the green fields that had emerged where desolation once reigned. Soren's sacrifice, along with so many others, had not been in vain. Earth had risen from the ashes, and with it the hope of a better future. But the road ahead was long. The scars of war were everywhere, and humans and Kyyrians would have to learn to truly coexist, rebuilding a planet that had come so close to being lost forever.